What's up, everybody, and welcome back to THI, formerly Tar Heel Illustrated. We'll have an announcement coming for you guys soon, so make sure you guys just stick with us and keep it locked here. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones and AJ. We're here to talk about the importance of Hubert Davis in North Carolina getting off to a good start next season. And the way we're kind of looking at this is we got the non-conference schedule put up in front of us. We're going to really hone in on, especially to start out, the first month of the season, starting with the first official game against Central Arkansas on November 3rd and going through the game at Georgetown on December 7th. So just a little bit over a month. We'll talk about the other non-conference games after that as well, the 4 other ones after that as well. But that's the way we're kind of going to define at least a good start to the season, and I'm sure we'll elaborate on that more here in a second. But AJ, I think this topic of conversation and the statement in itself of the importance of them getting off to a good start kind of goes without saying. I think obviously when you look at the pressure that Hubert's been under a little bit the last few seasons, how last year went in particular, and just this new look roster, a lot of money spent on it, and a lot of new faces coming in. What's this team going to look like? The importance of Carolina starting the season well and us not having to talk about the net ratings in December is super important, not only for my mental health, but Hubert Davis and the North Carolina basketball program, especially looking forward. So let's start with this question. Let's define it first. When you say a good start to a season, especially in that first month or so through the Georgetown game, what would you classify as a good start for the Tar Heels?
I know we said a minute ago before you hit record, we're doing 2 brackets. I'm going to do a third just to kind of define here. Okay. The first 5 are at home. So they got to be 5-0. They got to be. I did a solo drop the other day. Kansas is a must-win game. I think it's the most must-win of the non-conference games. Cannot lose at home to Kansas, especially since the Jayhawks been a little down from being number 1, 2 seed type of team that they had been for the last 20 years before 2 years ago. And there's a chance that's not a quad 1 game this year, because if they're not in the top 30 of the net, that's not a quad 1 game because it's at home. Mm-hmm. So you got to beat them.
Real quickly, AJ, just to butt it, for those who didn't see that drop, what led you to pick that game as the most important non-conference?
Well, because I think that this program has not been real good early under Hubert Davis. And they've lost a lot of games to quality teams. And given the fact that there aren't a whole lot of wow opportunities in a non-conference schedule, or even pretty good opportunities, like Georgetown's one, that they got to get a win like that under their belt early.
Especially
last year, they went and played Kansas well on the road because they came back from the 20-point deficit. And I thought they felt too good about themselves afterward, almost like, hey, boy, look what we did. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be a kind of team that sort of went like that all year. And that's why they barely made the tournament and probably did deserve to be in the tournament. This year, you got to take care of business. You take care of Central Arkansas. Kansas comes in. It has got to mean the world to everybody there. And you got to take care of it. You get that one in your back pocket. Now you've got that the rest of the year. Odds are it's a quad 1 game. Bill Self is one of the best in the business. Odds are it's a quad 1 game. No guarantee, but those are the odds. And then it gets you to Fort Myers at 5-0. You've already beaten Kansas. St. Bonaventure, quality opponent, but not a great opponent. And then you got Michigan State, a team that beat you last year too. So if you can rack those 2 up by Thanksgiving, and the Michigan State game's on Thanksgiving, you got 2 quad 1s in your back pocket, basically. Mm-hmm. So I think Michigan State is a more winnable game by beating Kansas because of the psyche of this team. A lot of new guys coming together, a lot of people coming down on Hubert. And if they lose at home to Kansas, the fan base is going to melt down.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that's the most important non-conference game.
That makes sense, yeah.
And quite frankly, of the really good opponents that they play, Kansas, Michigan State, Kentucky, and Ohio State, it's the only one that's at home. 2 are neutral and 1's on the road. You got to win. You got to protect your home court.
So when you look at those focusing on, again, the first month alone, Central Arkansas through the Georgetown game, which is what is that, 9 games? 8-1, an acceptable start to that. Maybe losing in Michigan State and Fort Myers. I mean, Michigan State coming off a really good year. I mean, I think there's a couple games in there. Kentucky as well, at Kentucky. That's a very losable game. I think that's the one of the non-conference games you kind of circle and say, look, if Carolina goes to, Rupp and loses, like, okay, you don't want to go there and lose by 40. But, if you lose, that's a game you could probably look at and say, yeah, that's a tough place to go. So 8-1, you think that'd be a good start? What about 7-2, or is that kind of?
I think part of let me go back to 5-0, because other than Kansas, they got to rout those other teams.
Mm-hmm.
They got to clobber them. They've got to beat the hell out of Central Arkansas. First of all, it helps your net. And God, it's July and we're talking net.
God, I know. It's tough.
My dad's going to leave me out of the will now.
He hasn't already.
Yeah, well, I think I've already used it up. Needs some help, Dad.
Yeah, come on, man.
They've got to clobber Central Arkansas. They've got to beat those teams soundly. They've got to.
And we've talked about that a lot every year.
Years ago, the Pete Nance year, they weren't pounding those teams the way they should. And it was a precursor. It was kind of a glimpse of that, or they don't have that other gear. If you have that other gear, and I know teams develop during the course of the year, and you don't have to beat all of them by 40 points, but you've got to beat some of them. You got to show that gear is there. And I think that they have guys that can help that go pretty deep into the roster. So the drop off when you're playing Central Arkansas really shouldn't be that noticeable on the court with production in a game like that when you go to the bench. So they've got to blow the doors off some of those teams and beat Kansas, head to Fort Myers. Now you got the next four, St. Bonaventure, Michigan State, in Fort Myers, at Kentucky, home against Georgetown. Georgetown's going to be a sneaky, tough opponent because they have a really, really good coach. They're building up the program there. They're going to come in. They play a really bad non-conference schedule. They'll probably have a lot of wins under their belt when they come in. They'll be very confident. It'll be a great opportunity. So Carolina has to be able to show that they can handle that 4-game stretch like a pro-type team, like the way Carolina used to handle those stretches. So I say through the 9, if they do take care of business in those first 5, I say they got to go 3-1 in those two, simply because I think for this team to really take off in an ACC play, they have to have a really good non-conference year.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, the kids are going to hear the doubters. They're going to hear the complainers. And you never know how the locker rooms handle it. A lot of new faces. How do they deal with it? How do they deal with being in a situation where you're losing a lot and you're not really playing up to standard, but they don't have the vibe of the standard there? I think winning will give the vibe of the standard more. And the expectations of the fans will grow. And I don't care what coaches say. Players are more connected to fans now and what they think and how they feel than ever before. And it's never going to change. Mm-hmm. The old, we don't allow newspapers in the players' lounge stuff is passe. That's long gone.
They got these things now. Yeah.
Woody Hayes' players probably didn't even know what the name of the paper was in Columbus, right? You can't avoid it now. You can't avoid it. And it's not even newspapers. It's just Yahoo's on social media.
Yeah, it's so accessible nowadays. You're absolutely right.
I'd say 8-1. I'd say 8-1 in that group.
I'd agree with you. I think 8-1. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. You don't, especially in that 4-game stretch you just mentioned of St. Bonnie's, Michigan State, at Kentucky, Georgetown. I mean, I think 3-1's is a good expectation too, because of that Kentucky game, or maybe. I mean, let's say you go to Kentucky. Let's say you lose to Michigan State and go to Kentucky and win it. Great, you know what I mean. But you can't be, if you go 2-2 through those games, you're losing 2 of those. I mean, let's say you beat St. Bonnie and Georgetown at home, St. Bonaventure in Fort Myers, and you lose to Michigan State and at Kentucky. You're again kind of in the same situation where you're like, okay, let's say maybe you beat Kansas, but the 2 other good teams you've played, essentially you've lost to, and then the net word starts creeping. And then
look at Kansas's schedule. You could go into finish exams. If you go 2-2 in that stretch, you could be 7-2. But Kansas could be like 5-4 at that time. Yeah, they got a tough schedule. By the way, Kansas comes to NC State this year too.
Oh,
so that'll be interesting. So it's possible that the Kansas win may not be this is the win you want to hang your hat on win this year. It's possible. I know it sounds crazy to say that because of the laundry, but it's possible. So you've got to take care of business. Then you go into the back part of that before ACC play. You've got, Ohio State is a team that rarely in recent years has lived up to what people say. And sometimes they don't say much. I guess they do. If they pick you 15th and they finish 14th, hey, they exceeded expectations.
Overachieved.
Still 14th. This year, they're supposed to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're top 50, that's a quad one opportunity. Even if they're in the mid 40s, that's the kind of quad one win Mountain West teams get. Mountain West teams have 5 quad one wins, but they're all with teams between 35 and 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
Carolina last year, all their quad one games were teams in the top 15.
Mm-hmm.
So not all quad one wins and losses are alike. That's an opportunity to get a quad one win. Perhaps it stays a quad one win. It isn't like going to Rupp Arena and winning. So they can get 3 quad one wins in the non-conference by beating Kansas at home, and the Jayhawks stay in the top 30, by beating Michigan State on neutral floor, and Izzo's teams are going to be in the top 50, and then beating Ohio State, and you think, okay, maybe this Ohio State team will come close to living up to the potential. If they're 42 in the net, it's a 3rd quad one win. If they got that going into ACC play, they're going to be in really good shape. And then ACC play won't be about getting into the tournament. Yep. ACC play will be about where they seated in the tournament. Mm-hmm. What do they have? What is at their fingertips? What is in their grasp? Could they use the ACC to get a 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, or is it back to Dayton? Last year it was back to Dayton. They created that for themselves, mm-hmm. and the league part helped that as well. So I think the non-conference games are hugely important. I think the games against South Carolina Upstate and Navy and Radford and Central Arkansas are very important to build momentum, to show that you have foot on throat ability, and also to build up that net a little bit.
I think the question is, and that's why that's why I alluded to Hubert Davis early on too. I specifically said Hubert Davis and North Carolina because of the sheer amount of roster turnover that Carolina has. I mean, the only guy returning on the roster that's hit a 3-pointer in a Carolina uniform, Seth Trimble. He's not exactly a super prolific 3-point sharpshooter necessarily, but that just shows the roster turnover that Carolina's had and all these new faces coming. I think the challenge is with this coaching staff is in order to get off to a good start, you have to be ready from game one. I mean, again, Central Arkansas in the first game, you got a couple exhibitions before that. We talked about BYU, Winston-Salem State, but starts with Central Arkansas, and 4 days later, you welcome Kansas into your arena. Yeah. That could be a challenge for a new look team. Let's not get it twisted, especially with just all these new faces adapting to a new system and getting to know each other and play with each other. So I think the question becomes, this is what I think would be considered a good start. The question then I think shifts to, is this team going to be capable of getting off to a good start? I think there's a lot of new good parts on this team, a lot of things to like about this team, but sitting here and trying to predict what this team is going to be against Kansas or against St. Bonaventure and Michigan State is a very tricky thing to do because there's just so many new faces on this roster. So those are kind of the two things you're having to balance of like, what is a good start, but also like, what is this team going to look like early on? And it's just anybody that's predicting how good this team's going to be in game 5, I think is just taking a certified leap of faith and a guess right now because of the roster turnover. So
the other factor is the ready to play factor. Mm-hmm. And I think ready to play in some games will have a lot to do with foot on throat. Mm-hmm. So East Carolina is an example. Are they ready to play that day? If they're not, that may not be a cakewalk. ECU is in a decent league. The program they weren't bad last year.
No.
They weren't bad last year. I mean, you could argue they were probably about like Stanford, maybe. Mm-hmm. Stanford won in Chapel Hill. They didn't have run out a guy like him, but still, I think that in December, when there aren't students in there and there's a little more purple and gold in the building than there should be, but there will be, if that team is amped up and comes in and Carolina's kind of like, that could be a dangerous game. I know it sounds ridiculous to say, but you know what? We've seen ridiculous before. You see ridiculous all the time in college basketball. So many teams lose games like that because of the ready-to-play factor. So if they're really good early and they pounce on some of these teams and they apply foot to throat and win by 30 and 40, which they should in a lot of these games, that will be an indicator to a degree. But the ready-to-play indicator is a huge one. I remember in Roy's first title team, the 04-05, they had a schedule in December where they kind of played a stretch of teams that weren't that good. And I remember going into that stretch, I read something in the Star News about how, hey, we're really going to find out a lot about this team right now. And people are like, oh, what are you talking about? They're playing Hartford and Marist and that kind of crap or whatever. I said, no, we're going to find out how ready this group is, how much this group loves playing together, and how much they're ready to go out and just kill everybody. And they blew the doors off those games, those opponents. And that, to me, made them look like a real, true potential national champion. They didn't screw around. Mm-hmm. They respected their opponents enough, but respected themselves, and they took care of business. This team, we don't know what they are. We don't know what they're going to be about, but they have an opportunity with a bunch of new guys to be ready to play every game, and we're going to find that out through the first 13. They're going to be ready for Kansas. They'll be ready for Michigan State. They'll be ready for Georgetown, Ohio State. Probably be ready for St. Bonaventure, you would hope. They would understand that's not a bad team. But are they ready for South Carolina Upstate coming off exams? Now, they were terrible last year, so it may not matter. But are they ready for East Carolina? Are they ready for Navy? You know, Navy went to UVA a few years ago and beat a pretty good Virginia team on the road.
And even Radford, I mean, it's 4 days after the Kansas game, you know.
Yeah, I remember Tony Bennett saying after that was, my guys weren't ready to play. My job's to get them ready. I didn't do my job.
Yeah. So, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think there's so much to look at in the early season in college basketball. A lot of people just kind of blow games off. I love those games. I told you before that when I was covering the whole area, I had a lot of games early in the year where the New Hampshires and Albanys of the world came to town, to Duke State, Carolina, and Wake, and gave me an opportunity to really watch guys. Like, who communicates on defense? How hard does a guy help out on someone driving the baseline? If they're nonchalanting it, going through the motions in a game there, they're going to do it at some time against a really good opponent or in a second round NCAA tournament game. It becomes wiring who they are, and they're not going to be as good as they should be. They're really, really good teams. You're going to have a bad game or two. Human nature is to not always be ready, but for the most part, you're not going to have more than one or two of those. That's why they can't afford to do that. Like, if they do it against Central Arkansas, they win by 16. If they beat Upstate by 20, if they beat Navy by 14, if they beat ECU in the struggle and they beat them by 7, those are the kinds of things that will be an indicator that the fiber that's needed might not be there. On the flip side, if they just blow the doors off these guys, it might also be an indicator that they have that necessary fiber that gets you through your tougher regular season games and is something that gets you to the second weekend in March.
Yeah, you can learn so much about your team during the season. I mean, you spoke about the 05 team just real quickly before we head out of here. I mean, the 04-05 team, same team that went on to win a national title. I mean, let's not forget, that's the same team that, minus Raymond Felton, who had to sit out the game because of, getting in trouble for playing in an unsanctioned league or something during the summer. It's the same team that went and lost by 11 in the first game to Santa Clara. Then they go and win 14 in a row. So again, it's not to say that, okay, if Carolina struggles early and maybe, struggles to beat some teams a little bit convincingly early on in the season, first few games, doesn't mean it defines the team necessarily moving forward. But again, these are lessons you can kind of learn early. And in a perfect world, you want to be taking care of business early, beating Kansas at home and building on that, and not be, you look good for a couple games early. Maybe you look good against Kansas and then you kind of lay an egg against Radford. Again, not losing to Radford, but you're not ready to play as much in that, and maybe it's not as convincing as it should be. Those are lessons you can take on to the rest of the season as well. So I just find the early season so fascinating, mainly because I don't want to talk about the net, and I just want Carolina to go out there and just win some games so we don't have to talk about that in November and December. But still, you can learn so much about a team, especially a new look team like this in North Carolina. I mean, these early season games are just so important. It really, I think, sets the tone for what the rest of the season is going to look like, because you might get hit with some adversity early on, but how do you respond to it and how do you come together as a team? I think those are the things. So. And
I actually believe, and this may sound crazy to some, but I actually believe a lot of times you really find who your leaders are when you're playing against Central Arkansas, when you're playing against Navy, when you're playing against Upstate, because if a couple of guys are just kind of got a little sluggish, who's the fanny smacker that gets them going?
So important.
Everybody's going to be ready to play against Kansas. Hubert's going to have to go around and look at everybody's eyes and make sure they're ready to go. They're going to be ready to go. But are they ready to go when ECU comes in town? Are they ready to go when Navy or Radford come into town? And the guy that senses that in the locker room an hour before the game or at team meal or whatever and kind of figures out a couple of switches to flip, he becomes their leader. He becomes the voice. He becomes the mojo guy.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stuff is developed then. You can't really wait and develop leadership in February.
No,
those seeds are sown long before then.
Yeah, and those are conversations we had at times last year a little bit, being like, who's the vocal guy on this team? You got a lot of experience here, and RJ Davis and other guys, but like, who's the fanny smacker? And I think sometimes with last year's team, you kind of struggled to kind of figure out who that was at times, and it felt like sometimes they didn't necessarily have.
I know who wanted to be that guy, but I think he struggled at times because he wasn't always getting the minutes and wasn't always productive, and that was Seth. And that's why I did that pod. We did that pod a while ago about Seth being that guy, the leadership guy, the go-to leadership guy. I think this year Seth will have the authority to do that. Definitely. He will feel like it's his position to do it. So maybe he's the one that senses in pregame when they're playing East Carolina in 4 hours, hey, wait a minute. Nah, you guys are ready. You guys got to understand this club's got this dude, and this dude, and they beat Memphis or whatever, and they can come in here and beat us. You need that guy. You need a couple of those guys, but you got to have at least one before you have a second and a third, and that stuff comes out early.
Absolutely. Yeah, it comes. That's why, again, I think the early season games are obviously fun with a lot of the opponents you get matched up with, but also so important to the longer season outlook. Who's developing as leaders? How is this team playing against teams they should be beating? Are they, like you've mentioned, and how are they also playing against quality opponents, which Carolina will certainly face? So let's do this. Get involved in the comments. What do you think is an acceptable non-conference record or start to the season Carolina can have and that you're looking to have to feel good about this team and maybe not have that pressure on the team and Hubert Davis that could easily come early in the season if Carolina loses to Kansas and loses to Michigan State and we're in December talking about net, which I just pray I don't have to do. I really do.
If they play Ohio State December 22nd in Atlanta, if I'm in the press room,
say it, AJ, don't say it.
I'm in the press room there talking to some other North Carolina media about, well, this is their last shot to get a win that matters outside the ACC, then this team is in trouble.
Yeah, we're talking about it on the basketball show before that game in the week. Yeah. Oh God, I
Christmas at my dad's. They didn't take care of business. I got to hear that all day.
Don't want to talk about that, man. Just take care of business early on. We'll see what happens at ACC, but just take care of business early on. If we got to talk about net in February, I'll get over it. But December, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that at all. So God, well, we'll see. We'll see. A lot of good opportunities for North Carolina, a lot of winnable games there, a lot of challenging games as well. So we'll see what this team had. But get involved in the comments. Want to hear from you guys as always. We'll make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell too. We'll have an announcement coming soon on the future of THI. I know you hate it too. I hate being coy on here. I know we say it every podcast, and I know people are probably tired of hearing it, but there will be an announcement soon. But it just, at this point of recording right now, it's just, we're not in a position to be able to come out and say it yet. So hopefully soon though, sooner rather than later. Football's not far away. So we got to get it done soon. Yeah. It's creeping up on us now, man. So yeah, we'll have one, but again, keep it locked to our socials. Links are below, and obviously subscribe on this YouTube channel as well. We appreciate y'all watching. See y'all next time. Thanks.